Coverage of the Patriots all throughout training camp. And Sean, the regular season's around the corner.
Right.
When that starts, nothing to change. Go to Sean McGuire on Nesson.com to catch your full coverage. Sean, how are we doing today, my man?
Not too bad, George. It's officially football season. I mean, death of summer. Summer is officially behind us, and it is football season.
Yeah, I went out to Nantucket to kill summer. I know you and Keegan held it down here.
That's right.
I was happy my key card still worked by the time I got back. That was the one thing I was worried about.
It wasn't up to us.
If it was up to you, I wouldn't even be allowed back on the premises. Hey, we got a full show for you guys today. We go through some Gerard Mayo comments that he's made, both on the radio, both at his presser. We dissect them because you know what? It's still all over the place, no matter what Gerard does. We'll talk some Drake May, Jacoby Brissett as well. We'll go through bold predictions. And we got interviews with Shireen Williams, covers the NFL, has been doing it for a long time. She's down in Dallas now. She has a great input on the Jacoby Drake dynamic. And then also my boy Chancellor Johnson, who covers the Texans down in Houston, hops on for a 20-minute convo about CJ Strouds, Stephon Diggs, D'Amico Ryans, and more. We got all that right here on Foxboro Rush. Let's get into it. Gerard Mayo, Sean, we know, has his weekly appearance on WEEI. And in the morning, he said, quote, I should have given more context to the comment at the time, talking about Drake May had played better than Jacoby Brissett. He said, Drake had more playing time in the preseason, Jacoby, and that was intentional. Drake May having more playing time is not the same as Drake had played better than Jacoby. And also, everyone saw Drake May played better than Jacoby Brissett. I think this is why Gerard Mayo had his sub 2-minute presser when he announced quarterback one, because the Patriots and their PR and their entire staff, and Gerard himself knew if he said Jacoby's our starting quarterback and then you let him answer 8 to 10 minutes worth of questions, he would not have made it out there alive. This is another example of that. He has not handled it well at all, and I don't think it matters. I don't care how good a head coach is at a press conference. It does not matter. Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, they are the worst press conference guys of all time. Belichick's a GOAT. Andy Reid's a number 2 GOAT. Shanahan's one of the best head coaches right now. Gerard is just trying too much to give the media too much in these interviews. And we did notice it when he was asked about his backup situation. He said, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. That was smart, Sean. He took a page out of the Bill Belichick book of how to be awful at press conferences and how to hate the media, which is fine. Just do that. But don't try to be a friend of the media and talk yourself in circles and talk yourself under a bridge. So for him to say this, it's just an insult to the intelligence again. It's just not genuine. Like, we're not dumb. The fans in New England, the fans in Boston are not dumb. So don't say when you say Drake May had played better than Jacoby Brissett, well, it was actually he had more playing time in the We didn't ask who played more. Who played better? It was Drake May. We all saw it. That doesn't matter how much playing time Jacoby got or Drake May got.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, he's backtracked, and then he's went forward, and then he's backtracked, and it kind of has been, just talking in circles. I also did think it was, I guess, insightful that we heard on, I believe it was Monday, when he came out and he answered a question about how Drake would be the quarterback if Jacoby Brissett came out, or if Jacoby Brissett got hurt. That's something that I could have seen him punt on, and it was certainly a topic of conversation. I mean, how many times did me and you talk about, Bailey Zappi off the practice squad or something like that if Jacoby was ever to get hurt? Never mind the fact it could have been a different veteran. So I actually think that he gave us a little bit with that, but overall, the handling, and I talked about this with Keegan last week too, the handling has just been mystifying. When he reopened the quarterback competition door, and then he comes out, say that Drake outplayed Jacoby, and I thought at that point, I'm like, oh my God, like this is, because we knew at the time that 3 days later or whatever, it would be Jacoby was a starter. I thought that was like the real point where, wow, you stepped in crap there. But yeah, just overall, just been a lot of, going back and forth and backtracking and, I guess trying to get it right in the public eye. But overall, I definitely agree that he botched the situation.
Sean, I know I was gone for an episode, but Dad's back in the house. Please don't curse on my show. No cursing on Fox. I'm joking. You're all good. Crap is nothing. It's one of the least worst, 4-letter words. You mentioned it and you brought it up. This is another soundbite I wanted to get to, another quote from Gerard Mayo. On Monday, he said if Jacoby Brissett, as you said, got hurt in week 1, Drake May would play week 2. Quote, when we talk about developing a guy like Drake May, that is a continuing process. If Jacoby was to get injured in the first week, 1,000% Drake May would be the next guy in as a number 2 quarterback on our roster. You know what? And I agree there's insight there. If Jacoby was to get injured in the first week, 1,000% Drake may be the next guy in as a number 2 quarterback. I'm going to really read between the lines here. Yeah, right now as it stands, and right now as we see our offensive line and our optimism, if Jacoby got hurt in week 1, Drake May is a number 2 QB. But he didn't just say it and leave it blank. Because if this offensive line, and honestly though, if this offensive line looks terrible week 1, they should not put Drake May in. I don't care if Jacoby gets hurt. Throw Joe Milton to the Wolves. I do not care about Joe Milton. But if this offensive line continually looks bad, Drake May could be the backup quarterback week 1. And they go, this offense is terrible. He can't get protected. We can't run the ball. The receivers can't get open. We can't give a rookie quarterback this exposure. He could be the backup quarterback week 1 and not be the backup quarterback week 4. And that wouldn't be a reflection of their trust in Drake May. It would be a reflection in their trust of the situation he'd be playing in and that they don't want to put him there. So I love what I did with this one. I just went and twisted it all up. But he's saying week 1, and yeah, sure, Drake May should be the backup quarterback right now. But this offensive line is going to look terrible. I don't have hope with this offensive line. So I don't think Drake May I don't think he should be the backup week 1. I don't think he should be the backup at all. You're either starting him because the situation's good, or you don't want to throw him into that mess of an offense.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it's one of those things like this is all banking on an injury to the quarterback, and we're obviously not wanting or wishing that to happen, but you have some wiggle room there because if it doesn't happen, then this never comes to fruition. So we'll be able to see if it does happen, if they kind of reassess and those sorts of things. But man, could you imagine if, let's not say week 1, but let's say week 3, that, something like this actually happens to Jacoby. He misses, even if it's a short term, 2-3 weeks ankle sprain, something like that. Could you imagine if they go out and they don't have Drake as the starting quarterback those next 2 weeks? I mean, that is just talk radio, just salivating. I feel like that. What a storyline that would be. But yeah, we'll see if anything changes. But I do think for right now, that's probably how they feel.
And if Jacoby goes down and Drake May is still not the starter, but Gerard Mayo can't lose a locker room, but at the same time, like, what does he owe this offensive line? Mm-hmm. But it's more if he can't throw Elliott Wolf under the bus. Because if he came out and he was honest and he said, Drake May is not going to start, and it's because we don't think the situation around him is good enough to support a rookie quarterback, whose fault is that? Mm-hmm. The guy making the decisions, the guy running the draft, the guy that ran free agency. And at no point did they get a Jonah Williams, who's a left tackle. At no point did they get even a Kingsley Sewell-Mattia, who's a project, or a Patrick Paul, who's a project, but once again, a left tackle. And I think one more quote Gerard Mayo, he said on WEEI in the morning. As head coach, I have the final say on the starting depth chart decisions. I do value the opinions of others, and Elliott Wolf's opinion is definitely valued, but as head coach, I have the final say with the quarterback. I don't believe that for 1 second. But he has to come out and show that he's the head coach and he runs it, but he doesn't know quarterback play. He knows what a competitor looks like. He knows what a guy that can respond to adversity looks like. But overall, he doesn't know what offensive line play looks like. But I think it's so bad, he can see it and go, we're not starting him because the offensive line is terrible. But that should be up to Alex Van Pelt. That should be up to a guy that's 50-plus years old, been around the league forever, been around different quarterbacks they had to build up and develop. That should be up to AVP, and I'm fine with that. But again, it's just disingenuous to say, I have the final say. I make the call on the starting quarterback. Because if Gerard Mayo made that final call, I think Drake May would be starting right now. But also, by not starting him, he's buying himself and Elliott Wolf time.
Yeah, and he came out just the other day and said, I have final say. When he announced it that day, I was down there for that 80-second press conference. He kind of stepped over his words.
He said we.
He said we, and then he backtracked in that case too, and kind of said no, I. So it was funny, he came out and it was much more of like a declaration, I guess, like, no, I have the final say.
Save face.
Yeah, more or less, but. I think I agree that Gerard would be more likely. Like, I think Gerard wants to see Drake play at this point sooner than others want to. Like, I think that Elliott Wolf would rather wait. I think that Alex Van Pelt would rather wait. I think if it was only up to Gerard, I do agree that, like, I don't think he would be playing week 1, but I also think it wouldn't be week 10 or something like that. Like, I have a feeling if they come to a middle ground is because Gerard is on one side and, Elliott and maybe Alex Van Pelt are kind of on the other.
I just think that for Gerard Mayo, for Elliott Wolf, and AVP, they shouldn't be in a rush to start Drake May. Because if Drake May develops and he gets good And I think 2.5, 3 years into his career, he all of a sudden is that guy. Like, looks like that franchise quarterback. Looks like a guy that we're going to give him that 5-year, $300 million contract. Because that's what it'll be by the time he gets to that second contract. That's what gets Alex Van Pelt a head coaching job.
Yep.
And if they rush him and he fails and it blows up in their face, Gerard Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, and Elliot Wolf will be out of a job in 3 years. But if they wait a year, when he's right by year 2 and he looks good into year 3, that's what buys them another 2 to 3 to 4 years. And that's the business of it. Like, they have to look out for themselves. Now, it's the wild card in this is I don't know what Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft want, because they want the facade and the elegant solutions and looking like everything is great. The same way they baked into Gerard Mayo, he'd be the head coach. But I think, and we've seen it with head coaches that are desperate and know they're going to get fired, they play the rookie, because if the rookie shows flashes, they go, look, I'm cooking with something here.
Yep.
Give me another year or two. That helps him keep a job. But I think with Gerard Mayo, yeah, he definitely wants to play Drake May right now. It gives him the best chance to win and elevates the offense. But at the same time, he has to look at it of, this needs to be a long-term thing.
Yep.
He could be a head coach here for 10 years if Drake May works out. And Alex Van Pelt and Elliot Wolf can be here for a long time if Drake May works out. Do you think he really wanted to play Jacoby Brissett over Drake May week 1? Or do you think he wanted to play Drake May over Jacoby Brissett to be the starter week 1?
I think week 1, I think he wanted Jacoby Brissett to play over Drake May. I think they would probably, if you gave him whatever truth serum or whatever it is, I think they probably wish that Jacoby took hold of the competition more so than how it happened. I mean, the way the spring, and well, I guess the way the summer played out, training camp and then into the preseason, it was kind of like, now to be here, it's kind of like Jacoby backed into it to some extent, rather than like, oh my God, he went out in the preseason opener and the second and the third game and really played well. And you didn't see that. I mean, the preseason finale, he only played one series, but in both the second and third preseason games, Drake came in and lit it up. And, that's without a doubt, when the competition and the storyline about the competition really started to ramp up. So I think that they probably wished Jacoby did more to cement himself and to the outside, make it look like, he was deserving of it, as opposed to kind of backed into it because of his experience in the league and his experience in the offense. And, because they want to play the long game with Drake, which makes tons of sense. But I think if they were to actually tell you how they felt behind the scenes, I have a feeling that they really wish that Jacoby did more to grasp it and win the competition, I guess.
And everything for Drake May, what he was going against was backup defenses. And in the preseason, everything is vanilla defensively. Because part of that is coaches coming together and go, hey, we're going to keep it vanilla. I know you want to assess your guys on offense. We're not going to blitz. We're not going to have anything exotic, and we keep it simple. So that has to be remembered on how Drake May was executing against how Jacoby Brissett was executing. Did Jacoby still look bad? Yeah, wasn't great. But can he just keep everything together and drive by drive, play by play, game by game, not lose you games? And that should be the goal of the Patriots this season. And I don't know if Drake May can do that. We'll talk about it later in the show and what we think for starting. But I think what was great, Respect Her Game. It was hosted by Laura Stickles this week. Shireen Williams, longtime NFL reporter, was their guest. And Laura asked her about the Jacoby Brissett-Drake May dynamic. Here's a soundbite from Shireen Williams on Respect Her Game.
First question, Jacoby Brissett, he was named starting quarterback over Drake May. And as an unbiased reporter, what was your reaction to that? Because I think a lot of people around Patriots Nation were definitely a little upset by that. They wanted to see the new guy.
Well, we were actually on the air talking about it, and Mike Florio and I had a bet. And I said it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, and he said it's going to be Drake May. And the reason is, I think Drake May's ready. I don't think there's any question about that. I think the Patriots aren't ready for Drake May. And by that, I mean that offensive line is so porous. If you remember back, and this is probably before most people's time, but the Houston Texans made David Carr the number 1 overall pick. They threw him in as a rookie. They weren't ready for him. He might have been ready. We'll never know. But they gave up 76 sacks. He was sacked 76 times. He had no chance after that. He was scarred. He was done. We'll never know if he could have been a decent quarterback, because after that season, he was finished. I mean, you just can't take that many sacks and still have the head to do it. You're always thinking about getting hit. And so I think that's what they want to avoid by starting with Jacoby Brissett. Let's see how this offensive line holds up. Let's see how our receivers, what kind of separation they get. Let's see all those things before we just throw Drake May in there, who's ready for it, but maybe we're not ready for him. So this could be a challenging season for the Patriots either way. I like what they're doing. He'll be the starting quarterback at some point. He's going to get that experience this year. But let's take it slow with him and make sure that we're ready for him to be back there. We know he's ready. I mean, he showed that in the preseason. He was the better quarterback. There's no question about that.
If the offensive line does look good, when do you think would be the right time for him to make his debut?
Well, it's always after that bye week, I think, is kind of when you look at maybe changing quarterbacks, changing coaches, whatever you're thinking about doing. In the Patriots' case, is changing the quarterback. So maybe around that bye week, the question is Jacoby Brissett going to hold up long in this offense, getting his hit as much as he's probably going to get hit? We already saw the shoulder injury in the preseason. So it's got to be a case, and I saw Drake's quotes last week about I have to be ready. He has to be ready. He has to be a relief pitcher who's ready every single game to go in if Jacoby Brissett has an injury. So this could be sooner than later if that offensive line doesn't hold up. But I do think you look toward the bye week, kind of give a week. Hey, you sat and watched for a while. All right, it's your turn to go in there now. But if that offensive line holds up pretty well and they're still losing, then I think you're going to see this sooner than later.
I think that debut date that Shireen Williams points out, and check out the latest episode of Respect Her Game, hosted by Laura Stickles this week. That drops on Thursday. Wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime, or Nest on YouTube, same thing where you're watching or listening with Foxboro Rush with myself and Sean McGuire. So, I mean, let's start with, she says, I think Drake May is ready. They're not ready. Like, we both agree with that. Yep. Let's get into the conversation. And I think it's a convo worth happening like week by week because this can change. It can be fluid. If Drake May is ready... but the offensive line isn't ready, don't play Drake May. Mm-hmm. Shireen Williams and I thought the same thing as her. When the schedule came out right away, I said, you start Drake May. And I'm a guy that said he might have to sit a year or two. I think he came along much quicker than that, especially in Alex Van Pelt's system. But still that bye week, it's week 14. I am big on, if you start him, get him that game before. You come back from a road trip in Miami, you start him at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Then you let them take that game day actual experience into the bye, then at Arizona, at Buffalo, versus the Chargers, versus the Bills. What stinks is that the Patriots were offered an earlier bye week and they declined it. They didn't know they'd get that week 14 bye. But that's what makes this schedule layout so tough, where they have to hope Jacoby Brissett makes it through healthy. Because at Cincy versus Seattle, at the Jets, at San Fran, versus Miami, versus Houston, neutral game, London, Jacksonville, versus the Jets at home, at Tennessee, at Chicago, versus the Rams, at Miami. Man, that's a lot of good teams, a lot of good offenses they'll be facing, and this offensive line stinks. So she points out waiting for the bye. I don't think the Patriots have the luxury. If the bye was week 8, I think it would have timed out perfect. This is a team, Sean, that can open up 0-6, 0-8 on the year, and I would not be shocked. Mm-hmm. I'd be disappointed. I'd be disgusted. I wouldn't be shocked if they start out 0-8. But by then, you don't have time to wait another 5 weeks until week 13 to play Drake May.
Yeah, I think the exact same thing. I think going into the season, that week 14 kind of did stand out to me. But I think the more that we saw from Drake, I can't see that happening anymore. And I've kind of looked at a few different spots too. I think that one spot in the schedule that's kind of interests me is week 8 against the Jets. It's late October at that point. You get Drake playing at home. Then you get him against two relatively easy games. They go up against the Titans. They're on the road in Tennessee. Then they go back and they play the Bears. I mean, how exciting would that Bears game be if it was Caleb versus Drake there? So, and two, I guess, one home game as his rookie debut, and then 2 winnable road games, I think is fair to say. And then by that point, you kind of, he's 5 weeks away from the bye or whatever it is, so you get a quarter of the season, then get him to reset. I think that's kind of one spot that sticks out to me now. I don't know if I would have said that, in April or, May or anything like that. But I think now that kind of, late October, early to mid-November, I think that's kind of what sticks out to me.
All right, let's get into it. We talked about bold predictions. I like this. You sent it through the email chain we have before we host the show. What are your three? We each have three bold predictions for the Patriots this season. Sean, you give one. We'll go back and forth. A little ping pong here.
Okay.
What's a bold prediction you got for the Pats this season?
So I'm going to start with the boldest of the three from my vantage point anyway. And I'm going to say that Demario Douglas leads AFC East receivers in catches. So obviously those teams, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Jets, the one that makes this bold, I think, is Tyreek Hill. And we're talking about Demario Douglas. I mean, he's going into his second year. He caught 49 balls last year, 561 yards, didn't catch a touchdown. And then you go to a superstar like Tyreek Hill, had 119 catches last year. Even Garrett Wilson, 95 catches. No more Stephon Diggs, so I guess that helps the point a little bit. But the reason I'm saying this is because I think Demario Douglas's role in the offense is going to be significant. And just he's going to see a lot. And these 85, 90 catches, 60 of them might be 3-yard slants. But hey, that goes
and 70
down.
of them will be in garbage time when they're getting their teeth kicked in down 3 scores in the fourth quarter.
That still goes for a catch.
I think it's when it's Tyreek Hill, it's Jalen Waddle, it's Garrett Wilson, it's even Khalil Shakur with the Bills, or even Dalton Kincaid can lead that team. I just think with the health injury history of Pop Douglas, he's a smaller guy. And you know what? I think the quarterback situation can be so dire to get him the ball. It's bold. I agree. That's the boldest. I would take Shakir with Josh Allen.
Yep.
I would take a Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle with Tua or Garrett Wilson, who's really their only good receiver. It's Garrett Wilson. Mike Williams stinks. Malachi Corley isn't that good. So I get it.
A lot of
on that role
options in Miami,
offense.
though. A lot of options in Miami.
A lot of mouths to feed. That's why I would take Khalil Shakur or Garrett Wilson even over those guys down there. I kind of just said it. I think Patriots start out 0-8. I think that's the boldest I can give because I think in reality it's 0-6, starting out 0-8. And I'll double dip on my bold predictions. They start out 0-8. I still don't think we see Drake May until week 13. It's going to be so bad. But heads may roll. So I'm going with the double dip, a bold prediction. Start 0-8. These are handcuffed together. And Drake May still doesn't play till week 13. Because if they're 0-8, Drake May has to play if the offensive line looks okay to give a spark to the offense. But I don't think the offensive line is going to look good enough for them to put him out here. Mm-hmm. What else you got for bold predictions?
So I'm going to stick with another player. I'm going Keon White, 10-plus sacks.
I like that.
I love it. I don't know what the number is, if there's sports books or anything, but he is, in my opinion, probably their best 3-down player. He can do rush from the interior. He can rush off the edge. I think you're going to see him on all 3 downs pretty much every series. And I mean, this is a guy, 2023 second round pick. He only played 49% of snaps last year, 49% of defensive snaps last year. I think that could very easily be, 75, 80%. I think he's just going to see a ton of time. And no Matthew Judon, Christian Barmore, at least an extended absence. We'll see if he comes back at all. So the role that he can play, that Keon White can play, I think is just huge.
All right, last one. So they open up 0-8. I said Drake May won't play until the bye. I don't think this is that bold. I think they get swept by the AFC East. People are still going, well, the Jets are going to jet. Miami, Tua late. I just think this team is bad and this division's really good. And even their home game against Miami, the Dolphins luck out. It's early October. Then they go down to Miami at the end of November. That's when scary things happen. They're at Live. They're at King of Diamonds. They're at all those places way too late, and they end up playing bad on that Sunday. I just think they get swept by the AFC East. I don't give them a shot. Maybe that Bills game end of the year if the Bills are in, but I think that's going to be a Bills team fighting for a playoff spot. At Buffalo, December 22nd, home against Buffalo, January 5th, and they're probably so broken down and just have no just motive at all and just want to get on with the season. I just think the way it breaks down, 0-6 in the AFC East, the Patriots this season. I don't think it's that bold though, Sean.
It's a lot of losses.
And start out 0-8.
A lot of losses.
What's the last one you got that's a bold prediction for the season?
The last one I got is Ramondre Stevenson sets career highs in yards and touchdowns. So just to kind of give those numbers out, his career high in yards right now is just over 1,040. Career high in touchdowns is 5. I don't think that's that crazy. No. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a team that scores a ton of touchdowns, but I do think with, how much Alex Van Pelt likes to run, that outside zone scheme, all that sort of stuff, I think that Ramondre is going to have a huge year. And the running backs coach was kind of talking to us a few weeks ago. He specifically pointed out the amount of explosive runs he thinks Ramondre will be able to have just when he does, he's able to kind of pick his spots and cut up field sort of thing. So I think those, 1,200 yards, I guess he's working behind an offensive line that stinks. But when it comes to touchdowns, I can see him eclipsing that 5 number pretty easily.
Yeah. 1,100 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. I think this is bold, though, Sean, and this is where I'll back you. It's bold because, again, the offensive line stinks. He looked good in the preseason. We saw flashes of him looking good. But I don't know if he has the durability, or I just don't think he'll be allowed to even have the durability because he'll take so many hits behind the line of scrimmage. He'll probably lose his legs midway through the season just from being tired. I don't think he'll make it 17 games to even break 1,000.
Yep.
So I do think that's bold. I like that bolder prediction, Sean. First one, though, is a good one. What's that?
I said, I'm trying to be bold.
No, I like it. The boldness is there. Hey, I caught up with Chancellor Johnson. He covers the Houston Texans. A lot to talk about. C.J. Stroud, Stephon Diggs, Demario Ryans, and the expectations for Houston. Check it out right here. He's Chancellor Johnson, covers the Texans for KPRC2 in Houston. Chance, appreciate you hopping on Foxboro Rush, my man. Long time no see. How we doing today?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm honored to be with the brilliant Balekji, man. Thank you so much. This is one of my greatest honors.
The honor is all yours. The honor is all yours. Brilliant Balekji. I'm going to start using that one. My man, I mean, you're covering one of the hottest teams, one of the hottest athletes in all of sports right now. C.J. Stroud, Demario Ryans, the Houston Texans. Let's start with the quarterback. After his historic rookie season, now the conversation, it goes one of two ways. C.J. Stroud could have a sophomore slump. C.J. Stroud could be a top 5 MVP vote getter and be a serious candidate to win it. I'm with the latter on this one. But what are the expectations around Houston right now and C.J. Stroud after his phenomenal rookie year with the Texans?
Yeah, it's really hard to top what he was able to do in his rookie season, but of course he's going to try. For me personally, I'm not really a big believer in the sophomore slump. What does that even mean, right? Like, we have seen historically quarterbacks regress after their rookie season. As I'm sure you guys know very well over there in New England, with the quarterback who's no longer there anymore in Mac Jones. But the idea that, like, hey, now teams have tape on C.J. Stroud, well, they had tape on him last year, and he continued to shred defenses, week in and week out. And so when you think about him as a talent and the type of a football mind that he is, I don't – and on top of that, they got better. They provided him with more weapons. Not just, of course, the big name is Stephon Diggs and what he brings to what many people believe is the best wide receiver room in the entire league. Once again, sorry to Patriots fans out there who can't really say the same. But on top of that, in the backfield as well, they had one of pretty much a below average running attack last year. And now you bring in a Joe Mixon, who admittedly is aging, but historically speaking, what he's been able to bring in Cincinnati, they hope that he can bring that here in Houston. And so they have, as C.J. Stroud called, a 5-headed monster when you include Dalton Schultz to go along with that, their top 3 wide receivers, and now Joe Mixon. They're going to be a dangerous team, and I'm with you. I think he should be in the conversation for MVP this season when you look at, once again, the talent that's surrounding him. And now we have the national opportunities as well. That holds a big weight that now on a national scale, people will be able to see him. That starts on week 2 with Caleb Williams coming to town, Chicago Bears here in Houston for Sunday Night Football. So it's going to be a big year, not just for C.J. Stroud, but for the Houston Texans as they hope to get to, at worst, their first AFC championship in franchise history.
Like you say, that at worst, first AFC championship. But you're right. I mean, he'll have the opportunities at Green Bay, against Indy, at the Jets, versus Detroit, at Dallas, at Kansas City, versus Miami, versus Baltimore. To end the year, those are showdowns with some of the best quarterbacks and the best offenses in the league where he can shine through. You mentioned it, and that's where you can't talk C.J. Stroud without talking his receiving room. Nico Collins got paid after his phenomenal year. I'm excited to see the jump that Tank Dell makes in year 2 with C.J., who he handpicked to draft, and both of those guys year 2 with Bobby Slowick. But Stephon Diggs adds a layer to this passing attack unlike anything else we see in the league. How does Stephon Diggs, though, fit in this scheme? Collins and Dell are good outside, down-the-field receivers, but Stephon Diggs can line up anywhere. But how does he find his footing in that receiving room? And it's not a story of, well, there's one ball and so many receivers, especially for a guy that we know is one of the best route runners and one of the best receivers in the league in Diggs.
So you have to go back to the NFL Combine, where obviously all the GMs and coaches are in one place, evaluating prospective talent. And Demario Ryans, that was interesting. He doesn't really show his hand very much, but he was honest about how can the Houston Texans take the next step. And at that time, he said, we want to find another weapon to bring into this wide receiver room or bring into the Houston Texans offense that can be a separator on third downs. Well, a couple of weeks later, they ended up trading for Stephon Diggs, and a guy who's been able to get open. We've seen that throughout his entire career. And so as far as you're right, though, there is only one ball, but I think it's important to note, go back to C.J. Stroud. Even though he's a young quarterback, he's going to year number 2. Go back to his Ohio State days. Look at some of the wide receivers who were in the room at the time and some of the guys he was passing to. Look at Chris Olave, who's now with New Orleans Saints, Garrett Wilson. You have Marvin Harrison at the time, and I'm missing another name as well. But
Jackson Smith and Jigba. Yep.
Smith and Jigba with the Seahawks. So he's had the privilege and the opportunity to throw to a loaded wide receiver room before. And so it's something that he's not shying away from. And he's always said, you get open, I'm going to give you the ball. And I expect it to be the case for the Houston Texans. And, of course, winning solves all. As long as they win and guys will get their targets, I think Stephon Diggs will be A-OK here in Houston.
Is there confidence in Houston, though, that we've seen Stephon Diggs fall out of favor with Minnesota, fall out of favor with Buffalo? They took the biggest non-quarterback dead cap hit to trade him to Houston. Is there the confidence that this won't be the same dramatic, distraction-laced Stephon Diggs we've seen in the past this year in Houston?
Well, the ultimate vote of confidence comes with voting him a team captain, which we just got in today here on Tuesday. For Stephon Diggs to come to a new team, and granted, he was a captain when he was with the Buffalo Bills, but for him to come over in this swarm DeMeco Ryans era culture that the Houston Texans have been able to build since Ryans has taken over, and to have him be voted by his peers and his teammates, who's with him day in and day out, I think that says a lot about the type of respect that he has, because there were some other options on the table. And so for a guy like Stephon Diggs to come in, I've been at pretty much every single training camp. I've been there for all the preseason games. They absolutely love this guy. And so for him to come in and to work with some of this really young wide receiver group, even outside of the main other two, and Nico Collins and Tank Dell, you look at a guy like Xavier Hutchinson and, of course, John Mitchell III. Some really young talent in that room, and he's like a big bro to them. They really look up to him, and he's taken the challenge of becoming a mentor for them. And he's also brought energy, not just offensively, but for defensively as well. He's talked about how he's challenged Derek Stingley Jr., who I expect to have another big year, who should be, in my opinion, in the running for an all-pro type of year for him. He's talked about Stingley is more of a guy who's laid back and reserved, but he said, hey, now I'm trying to bring that dog out of him verbally, and he has on the field. He's kind of like a guy who kind of leads with his actions, but even defensively, he's been chirping at the guys on the defensive side of the ball, and it's been a mutual back and forth. So far, so good. No complaints here in Houston, but right now it's just the preseason. You got to play the games, and he'll see his former teammate not pretty much early on in the season. So, like I said, we'll see once those wins and losses start to get tallied up. We'll see once those stats really start to show how he'll end up being a fit here. But as I mentioned, to be voted on as a team captain early on, I think that says a lot about Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I believe that's Buffalo, home game for the Texans, week 5, and that's before they start their stretch. Soft spot in there, traveling to New England to take on the Patriots, but then that's Green Bay, Indy, Jets, Detroit, Dallas. Again, if this team wins those games, that's what launches a lot of these guys, like Derek Stingley. Would love to see him be healthy because he can be a top 5, top 3 corner and all-pro, like you alluded to. What's the excitement, though? Because I think the underrated thing is C.J. Stroud, Stephon Diggs, we know the talent. What is the excitement of these are guys, especially the dudes that were there last season, second year in a Bobby Slowick system, coming from that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, and second year for Slowick to be the full-on offensive play caller for this offense?
Yeah, I think if everything goes right, this will be the last year that Bobby Slowick is the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, and he'll be a head coach somewhere else. And for him, I think it's really important for C.J. Stroud to have another year within his offense, because it seemed like he continued to get better and better as the weeks got on. He got more and more comfortable, and Slowick has talked about how he's giving him a little bit more command of this offense. I thought Slowick, once he realized, like, hey, I have – even going back to last year, at worst, a top 10 quarterback, a guy who has shown he can make all the throws, he was able to unleash him a little bit more and really put trust in, at the time, what was a rookie quarterback. And we saw that in their biggest game of the year going into Indianapolis, and we all saw on primetime TV, the very first play from the line of scrimmage, he goes and airs it out to Nico Collins, hits him perfectly in stride that would open up to score a touchdown, leading them, ultimately to a victory and propelled them to clinching and going to the playoffs. And we saw that once again at home against one of the best defenses in the entire NFL, and they pretty much dog walked the Cleveland Browns. Granted, it was Joe Flacco who had a pretty good year as a backup for the Cleveland Browns, but they were able to pretty much handle them. And then, of course, they played the Baltimore Ravens and it slowed down a bit against that really top defense. But I think we'll see a lot more creativity. And how could you not when you do have a fully loaded offense, with that top three, those wide receivers. Now you get to play with Stephon Diggs, who's probably operating a little bit more in the slot. Now you get Tank Dell back, who was really, to me, the X factor for this Houston Texans team because he was so gosh darn explosive. And then, of course, Nico Collins as well, who had his big breakout year. He just got paid. And so there's a lot of weapons at the disposal for Bobby Slowick and this Houston Texans offense.
Yeah, and I think that is a reflection. Going out and getting Stephon Diggs, obviously you want to put all your chips in while you have a rookie QB like CJ under a cost control contract. But I think they know it too, that Nick Caserio is aware this is Bobby Slowick's last season as an OC because he'll get a head coach. Look at Dave Canales with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 1 year, did great, won a playoff game. Boom, he's leading Carolina. Slowick, to me, is the next head coach in waiting. But you brought it up too. I mean, with the X factors with Tank Dell. What are the red flags with this team, though? Because the offense is great with the weapons. That offensive line was banged up last year. This is a secondary that needs Derek Stingley to be healthy. But in your opinion, what is the red flag, if you see any, with this team that has playoff winning expectations?
Yeah, to me, I look at the secondary because, as we mentioned, with Derek Stingley Jr., he is one of the top corners in this league, and he's continued to get better and better every single year. His ball skills, I think, are second to none in this league, and he really can shut down a wide receiver. And he'll have plenty of opportunities with some of the bigger names that they'll have coming up on their schedule. But outside of Derek Stingley, your quarterback 2 right now is Jeff Okudah, who coming out of college, of course, as I'm sure you know, was one of the top picks, extremely talented, but he just hasn't really been able to string together consistent seasons. And so now here he is, starting in Detroit, ended up going to Atlanta, and now he's here with the Houston Texans, and right now he's a CB2. But they do have a lot of confidence in their second-round pick because they didn't have a first-round pick this year. Kamar Lassiter, the cornerback out of Georgia. Ironically enough, his moniker that he's been given since he's been with the Houston Texans is Dog. Granted, of course, he's a Georgia Bulldog. But he's pretty much answered all of the calls for the Houston Texans, at least through the preseason. They really like him a lot with the presence that he brings, his skill set. His biggest knock coming out of college was his speed, but so far we haven't seen that be any issues. And I wouldn't be surprised if right now he's kind of been playing a little bit they've been moving around a bunch, but if he solidifies himself as the cornerback 2 to go alongside and opposite of Derek Stingley Jr. But that secondary, if they can stay healthy, Jimmy Ward, who was another captain, voted for them, Jalen Petrie, who had a really rough year last year, but they're really moving him around and getting him back to his Baylor days where he's so dynamic as a weapon that you can use in the box. I'm trying to think of the jet safety Jamal Adams. Think about what Jamal Adams was able to do in his best years. That's what Jalen Petrie can provide for the Houston Texans. And so that secondary, they can stay healthy. That's kind of the question mark, and also the offensive line. We talk a lot about some of the newcomers on this team, but they'll also have a healthy offensive line where Titus Howard can play right tackle and not play guard, his natural position. If Kenyon Green, the former number 13 overall pick, if he can stay healthy and do what he's been asked to do, so far he's had a disappointing career, but he's now healthy and playing some of his best football. They can keep CJ Stroud healthy, and they can, run the ball. I think this is going to be a very, very dangerous team, and a team that can ultimately lead up to those expectations that many people have for them this season.
Yeah, even think about Texans. Healthy Shaq Mason right now at left guard. Juice Scruggs playing where he's supposed to be, not a guard, drafted as a center. That's essential, and you mentioned it too, and where this run game came up short, but the offensive line wasn't great. They're healthy. You get Joe Mixon with all those empty boxes he's going to face because of the receivers, and to get a play caller like Slowick, to me, it's a perfect storm. What is a good season for the Houston Texans, though? There's the hype train of this offensive talent. There's what the defense brings. Daniil Hunter, the new addition up front. Kalen Bullock, who could be a great safety. They drafted out of USC. And with all this hype, and we know how it works, Chance, all the attention they'll be getting all season long, people are going to be saying, well, you're shoving a Super Bowl down our throat. And if they don't win it, what CJ did, it'll be looking at a letdown. I say an AFC Championship game, just getting to that point, would be such an achievement for this group. But in your sense, you're there every day in Houston. What is a good season for the Texans?
I think you just hit it right on the head there. I think they have to get to an AFC Championship game. They've never done it before in franchise history. You didn't trade for Stephon Diggs, who at this point right now, how they restructured his contract, is only a 1-year deal. So it's a 1-year rental. They coughed up some draft capital to go get him. And I'm saying AFC Championship, but that front office, they're saying Super Bowl. You talk to players in the locker room, and even Tank Dell, he hasn't been shy about it. He's saying Super Bowl. I think realistic expectations is, once again, getting to that AFC Championship, because in order to get to the Super Bowl, that means you had to knock off the Ravens, at least some type of combination of Ravens, Chiefs. I'm blanking on somebody else who should be there.
Bengals, Jets.
Bengals, the Jets. If Aaron Rodgers is able to stay healthy throughout the season, this is some really tough names. But they didn't do all this to win the division. Mm-hmm. They didn't do all this just to get to the wild card round. Like they have aspirations to make the Super Bowl. I'm trying to be a little bit fair and say, listen, if they've done something they haven't done before, and that gets to the AFC Championship, that to me that's a good year. But once again, if they get to the AFC Championship and they're shown its levels, whether it's the Ravens or the Chiefs, then to me that's not good enough. Because look, they were able to get to the divisional round last year, but then they got embarrassed by the Ravens in that game. It ended up being 10-10 going to the halftime, but then the Ravens were able to separate, and offensively they weren't able to get anything going. Granted, it was just C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins out there. They didn't have Tank, who obviously missed a bunch of time, missed the rest of the season there. You bring in Stephon Diggs, but so it's getting to the AFC Championship, but being able to compete, to me, at worst. You can't get there and then you get blown out by Patrick Mahomes. He goes to another Super Bowl and it's like, oh, we had a good year, because no, they're still shown there's still levels to ultimately where you want to get to. Now you lose Stephon Diggs because they won't have the money to pay him again. This is a 1-year deal, and so once again, they didn't do that just to get to the AFC Championship. They have aspirations for a Super Bowl, but to me, that has to be the bare minimum. That's at least a conference championship. And
they have a head coach like DeMeco Ryans that has coached in a Super Bowl from his time with the Niners. And you're right, Stephon Diggs, 1-year deal. Danielle Hunter, 2-year deal. $48 million, I believe, of that guaranteed. You bring in pieces like this to put everything together around a rookie quarterback to win right now, especially a guy of his level. Chance, I want to end with this. Week 1, C.J. Stroud will be one of 15 black quarterbacks to start in the NFL. That's a new record after the 14 we saw last season. You and I, going back to our Wisconsin days, we always had conversations around what it was like being a black quarterback in the NFL, your experiences of being black in Wisconsin, and just growing up for both of us. But I want to ask you, CJ Stroud, and just seeing that number for you personally as well, 15 black starting quarterbacks in week 1. What does that mean to you as someone that grew up watching the NFL, now experiencing it, and you're covering one of those guys who's one of the best right up front every day in CJ Stroud?
I think it just shows you how much the game has continued to grow, and how quarterbacks now, some black quarterbacks, are starting to get a little bit more opportunity than what we've seen before. And so, yeah, you just mentioned C.J. Stroud. Black quarterback or not, he is one of the best quarterbacks across the board. Yep. And I think everybody's been able to see that. But that's something that he is aware of, something he certainly acknowledges. You look at the Houston Texans history before that, it was really just Deshaun Watson, who, of course, will be one of the 15 starting quarterbacks, at least he should be, if he can stay healthy, around the league. But, talk about the city of Houston, right, where there is a large crowd of African-American people here. There's a lot of black folk here. Let's keep it a buck, right? So to have somebody that people can relate to, at the end of the day, it's about winning football games. Like, if you stink, you stink. And so you can't hide from that. But it does help to have a quarterback who many people around the city can look at and that does look like them, that does talk like them, that has had similar and shared experiences as them. But once again, at the end of the day, you have to win football games. But I can say, C.J. Stroud, who is a West Coast Cali kid through and through, the impact that he's been able to make here in Houston as far as being in the community, turning around this franchise, when the Houston Texans were a joke 2 years ago, before Demario Ryans and C.J. Stroud has been able to took over this franchise. Not just C.J. Stroud, but Demario Ryans as well, who was a former player and one of the few black coaches in this league, to have the success that they were able to have in year 1, and now have an opportunity to do it in year 2 and continue for the foreseeable future. It is really cool to see, because once again, not just quarterbacks, but coaches, black coaches, that's still a problem today in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Getting those opportunities, having that, and seeing them succeed, I think is awesome, and it only helps continue to open doors, in years to come. And like I said, it's been really cool to see. But at the end of the day, on Sundays, you got to line it up and you got to win ball games, no matter who you are. And these Texans have been able to do that. We'll see if they'll be able to continue that moving forward.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of D'Amico Ryans. He comes from the Robert Saleh coaching tree when he was a coach under Saleh as a DC in the 49ers. Saleh means a lot to me as a Lebanese head coach. I know how important that is, D'Amico Ryans being a black head coach, especially in a city like Houston with C.J. Stroud. And you mentioned it. There's 15 black quarterbacks starting week 1. Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams. Those are guys I want starting. And then you get into the Geno Smiths, Russell Wilsons, Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett's. I just named 10 good starting quarterbacks. No matter what, those are guys that can win you games. But Chance, you're 100% right. That shows how the game is growing, and we're seeing it right in front of our very eyes. And it's exciting, I know, especially for you to be covering CJ Stroud up close and personal. He's Chance Johnson. Catch him on KPRC 2 in Houston. Chance, I appreciate you taking the time to talk the Texans, my man. We'll see you week 6 leading up. Hop back on Rush. You're always welcome, my man. We'll talk to you then.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, my man.
Appreciate it, Chance. That's it for Foxboro Rush. I'm George Balekji. Please, if you're listening, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Prime, please hop on, like, subscribe, rate, review. You're watching on YouTube, go into Nesson, hit subscribe as well. We appreciate you helping us out, and we appreciate you guys listening.